we are going to the WTA side on the men's side, where I don't know. I think that Daniel Medvedev, who won the most matches this year in the tournament in the WTA in the ATP Tour, I think that he's very very impressive. I watched him and I talked with the guys with James and Snize about him for the last I don't know 3 4 weeks. He keeps impressing. Will Copper, what do you think about this Medvedev guy? What do you think about his draw? And do you think that he's a good shot to be taken, or do you think that Rafa Nadal with a favorable draw there can go all the way to make the final? Rafa Nadal to reach the final right now is priced at 2.38, 2.67, depending the bookie that you have.
Yeah, men's draw is interesting. I guess I'll start with Medvedev because, there's a tendency to want something different to happen than what we've seen happen over and over and over and over again, which is that there are only 3 people with a reasonable shot to win a slam, which is freaking nuts. But where we are in men's tennis right now. And, I would say that, as I run a model, I'm giving historical weight to how you perform and in a Grand Slam setting. I'm getting almost 99% of my expectation here is that Djokovic, Nadal, or Federer wins this tournament. A guy like Medvedev, he's clearly the future, at least in terms of being a guy in the next 10 years who's going to be threatening and he'll break through eventually. But when he has his breakthrough, I will be shocked if it's at the US Open because his game much, much more compatible for the conditions in Australia and at Wimbledon. And, the fact that it's a little bit slower here, the fact that he has these big, ground strike, like the fact that his serve is so important and take a little bit of the heat off it. He's a little bit less effective, a little more vulnerable, more likelihood of playing tie breaks when he's against the top tier components. Tie breaks are a little bit less, certain, a little more uncertainty. So I think all said, Medvedev is not set up to do well at this particular tournament. He looked great in Cincinnati where the conditions were quite a bit faster. And I would say, keep an eye out for him next season in Australia or at Wimbledon, but not here at the US Open, which leaves us to, if not Djokovic, if not Nadal, then who? And I think the short answer is that this is a pretty straightforward Djokovic Nadal looks like the most likely and high likelihood final that we're going to see here. I have Federer pretty low right now in his rating. If you look at the arc of Federer's rating in my model over the last 3 years, he definitely peaked last summer he won Wimbledon, and it's been kind of trending downwards. Mm-hmm. Right now he's about as low as I've seen in a while. I think the hangover that comes along with losing in 5 sets to the Wimbledon final to Djokovic is still kind of lingering, and to a degree his form is not great. He's vulnerable. He may not make the semifinals, and if he does make the semifinals, what does he get? He gets to likely play Djokovic, so that's trouble. And all this has kind of led me to, well, is there value on Nadal? The minute we saw that, before the draw came out, I was expecting Federer and Nadal would be set up for a semifinal clash. And then the draw comes out, lo and behold, Nadal's the only one of the big 3 that's on the bottom. His path to the final goes through Dominic Thiem, who's not necessarily in great health right now and never really put it together on hard court other than a couple of small spurts here, Indian Wells, and, a nice run last year, which ended at the hands of Nadal. So I would say Nadal has a very clear path here to the final. When the draw came out, there were some stale lines up, and I grabbed 4-1 at a couple of shops, and I think that's a fair price. And we can kind of we could probably handicap the entire tournament in 5 minutes here. Nadal and Djokovic in the final. Who wins this, match? And, it's going to be during the day. It's going to be a little warmer conditions. We know that, plays into what Nadal likes to, how he likes to play. A little bit slower conditions. It could play more like clay instead of what we saw at the Australian Open final where he just got romped. So Nadal has a puncher's chance against a guy like Djokovic in the final if his path is easier. and Djokovic has to eliminate some of the more tough competition on his way to the final. You can see that. You could see a pretty 50-50 match in the final. So I'll take Nadal at 4-1 as my favorite look in the entire U.S. Open.
You're not worried, Tomorino Tomor on the chat is saying Djokovic has been bothered by the heat. We saw that in the Olympics. I think the condition will be an issue for him at the US Open.
It's true that he has been bothered by the heat in the past, but he had some transformation. I don't want to like say I know exactly what's going on with him, but he had some transformation where he figured out, what he needs to be doing from an eat, sleep, rest standpoint, perform better in the heat. I would expect that almost all of his matches leading up to the final, which I think will be a day match on Sunday of the second week, all of his matches will be prime time, center court. He'll have, the roof closed if it's raining. He's not going to be exposed to the worst of it.
Yeah.
A lot of the other guys who aren't in the prime time, slot, they're going to be out there in the sun getting their asses handed to them.
Novak's also won however many Australian Opens. I mean, it seems a little bit. I think he's fine with heat, as you say. I think it's probably more him who was the issue at the time.
Yeah, I think that's true.
But James, if you started, okay, we have the first quarter, second quarter, and fourth quarter packed. Okay, we know the winners. We have value on the third quarter. We have Tsitsipas at 3.5. We have Thiem 3.75. Felix Aliciem at 7. Roberto Bautista Agut at 7. And after that, we have a huge drop also from there. Nick Kyrgios 17, Gael Monfils 21, Denis Shapovalov 21. Rublev also 29. If you want, if you like Rublev to win the third quarter there. Matteo Berrettini, you guys were talking a lot about Matteo Berrettini in the last couple of months. He is priced at 41. So, James, any take on that quarter?
Yeah, so again, I make the point that I made earlier. I think several bookies, so this is true of both Tsitsipas and Thiem. They're being priced up at something like 3.5 with some of the bookies. And then I think Tsitsipas was even as long as about 6 or 7 to 1. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's something in that region, and Thiem is also 4 to 1. So I would say, again, if you're going to get involved, make sure that you've got a decent number of bookies. Take those good prices. They're clearly, I don't know why they're pricing them so strangely. So I had 2 for this quarter. The first one, which I think Snize tipped as well, actually, in the outright preview, was Thiem. I think there's a couple of points I want to push back on a little bit with the Nadal thing. I think Nadal will make the final. I think Thiem probably is the biggest threat. Obviously, we have slight concerns about his health, although my strong guess, I think, would be that was probably just a cold or some sort of kind of a fairly temporary illness. I would hope he'd be fine going into this, but we never know. So the second thing is Nadal did beat him last year, but he beat him 7-6 in a third set, and he got bageled in the first set. Thiem's also, he's said himself that Nadal's the player I think that he likes playing the most out of the big guys. He's the player that he's had probably the most success against those top guys. So I think in the bottom half, that would be the main concern for me. We can get Djokovic and Nadal to make the final at 3.75. That does still feel like it will happen. So at 3.75, that's probably worth a bet, but I wouldn't rule Thiem out. And so he would be my first bet in that quarter at 4 to 1 is Thiem. The second one is the person you literally just mentioned, which is Rublev, 28 to 1. This one's slightly more difficult, and this is probably something I would go for half stakes on as opposed to a full stake, because I'm slightly reading between the lines here with Rublev. He was very flattered in beating Federer, but he gave nothing away on the day. And he's also shown a level recently, pretty much ever since playing Hamburg and going deep in Hamburg. He's shown a level which I actually think is very much up there in that quarter. I think he has every chance of causing an upset if he manages to play at that top level that he's been showing recently. He's had a lot of success in the past in the slams. And also, again, Bet365 have it at 29. I believe most bookies have it about 17. So make sure you get the best price if you are going to follow that suggestion.
Yeah, it's very, very crazy how Name the finalists. You have Djokovic and Rafa Nadal at 3.25 with some bookies, 3.75 with others. And to win the women's side, you have Serena at 4.5. You know, this is unbelievable difference on price from between the WTA and the ATP Tour, where we already know who will win. World Cup or set 99%, either Nadal, either Djokovic, either Federer. But I think that is Nadal between Nadal and Djokovic also. Snize, what do you think about this third quarter? Or do you have a huge upset coming on from the other three quarters?
Yeah, so as opposed to the women's, the men's is much more dominated by the big names. We've had 7 first-time winners, or not 7 first-time, but 7 different winners in the last 72 years on WTA. Whereas the men's has been, I think 12 of the last 15 have been the big 3. As Whale of James have said, the men's is pretty straightforward. We have 3 names that are just superior to everyone else, really. Djokovic has won 3 out of the last 4 majors, only exception being, of course, Nadal's home at Roland Garros. The King of Clay won that. But yeah, looking at the draw, Djokovic has a few tough matchups there. I don't really agree with what Wells said there about Medvedev. The concern is obviously, can he perform at the Grand Slam level? But the conditions should suit him because he actually employs an extremely defensive game, much more so than one would think with his big size and big ground strokes. He usually wins his matches by grinding the lesser opponents down, by unyielding consistency from the baseline. And he can also put a lot of pace on the ball, stepping into it and hitting it flat. So I think he should do quite well here. The likely matchup in the quarterfinals would be Djokovic, Medvedev for me. I think Djokovic still wins, but I am on Medvedev outright. Got him at 16-1. If Djokovic for some reason should fall, I think it will be in that quarterfinal versus Medvedev. If not, he's a likely tight list. In the second quarter, there's no one to challenge Roger Federer at all. The biggest competitors would be Kei Nishikori, who's been woeful, sick, injured, far past his best. Borna Coric also coming off a back injury since Halle hasn't been good. And those are really, the big names. Pablo Carreño Busta, I mean, you have Grigor Dimitrov, but it's just really nothing that sticks out. So I bet Federer quite heavily there to win his second quarter. In the third quarter, I do like the look of Dominic Thiem. Tsitsipas has been eliminated in 4 of his 6 first-round matches. Actually lost in the first round of Wimbledon to Thomas Fabiano. Huge upset there. Hasn't been in the greatest of shape. I do like that look on Rublev. If he can sustain his form, he's a good look to win this quarter. But I like Thiem's evolution on hard courts. I think that the Indian Masters title and making the quarterfinals here, bowing out to Nadal in a 5-set thriller, best match of the tournament, speaks to him here. The surface here is slowing down a bit as he'll play predominantly during night matches. The humidity will slow and the temperature will slow the courts down considerably and make the ball bounce a lot higher, which favors Thiem's game. So I definitely think he's a good look to win the quarter. And I bet him at 3.5 in article and 3.75 personally. In the fourth quarter, it's tough to look past Rafa Nadal. I think he'll face Karen Khachanov, the Russian, in the quarterfinal, who actually pushed him hard last year. But I think that Nadal, fit and firing with 2 weeks off post Montreal title, should be able to win that. Really, no one else to speak of. We don't have Alexander Zverev, who you do well to oppose as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And Federer at 1.9 on his quarter, and after that we have David Goffin at 8, Kei Nishikori at 8, Milos Raonic at 8. Tomorino Tomor is saying that it's too bad that Del Potro is out. He is always fun to watch. Yes, absolutely. I'm a huge Del Potro fan, but unfortunately, I don't know when he will come back. If he will come back, I don't know exactly what to take from his conditions right now, his health and stuff like that. Well, Capper, so I heard you about the outrights. Do you think that you can tell us something about the first round bets, which you don't normally bet?
Yeah. Well, actually, and before we even get there, I didn't really I'm curious if you guys know that if you've seen a price on this, because the couple of books that I do my line shopping, I haven't seen it come up yet, but you guys have more access to some of the international books. Do you have a price for the exact result in the final? Djokovic defeats Nadal.
No,
That isn't up yet.
No.
no,
Okay. Well, I'm looking for that.
no, nowhere.
I would like to get that bet down, because I think it's pretty likely that that's the way the final goes. Not that that's the outcome of the final, but that the final will be Djokovic Nadal, and that it will be lined heavily in favor of Djokovic. He'll probably be in the minus, I don't know, 200 range after what Djokovic did to Nadal at the Australian Open final. I think people will be, and after what he did to Federer in the Wimbledon final, I think people will be eager to back him on the money line in that final. So I would like to get ahead of that curve there and get a plus money price on Djokovic to beat Nadal, because Nadal into the final is that's a really good bet. I really don't see anyone from the quarter four challenging him. And yeah, your points about team playing him tight were very valid. I'll just note that the way team fell apart in the French Open final, he really has kind of lost his. It looked to me like it's going to take him a couple of good performances, a couple of wins against Nadal before he's back in it mentally, in terms of thinking he can win, just because of the way that all went down at the end there. And so I would be I would be cautious about expecting team to give Nadal as great a test as we saw last year. And in fact, I think there's some value in the third quarter outside of team. Monfils has a shot, RBA has a shot, and those guys are in the 7-1, 11-1 range. So should be a fun part of the draw to watch. As far as the first round matchups go, I had Rublev circled against Tsitsipas to come away with an upset there. I'm cool on Tsitsipas's form in his game right now. It seems like, the fact that he pushed his limits end of last season and then rode that into a really hot first half of this year, he's kind of on fumes at this point, and he's going to need to, regroup in the off season before we see his top stuff again. So I like that look a lot, because Rublev has been playing well, although it looks like he may drop this match to Shapovalov today. Aside from that, there were a couple other pretty interesting looking spots to get an upset. I like Guido Pella as a dog against Pablo Carreño Busta. Busta has played longer into this Winston-Salem tournament than I think he would have liked, as far as getting up to New York, getting acclimated, and being fresh. So I think Guido Pella is going to get him there, and it's a little plus money dog spot. Also, I think Grigor Dimitrov is very much on my radar to be faded. I haven't exactly decided how to go about this yet. But Seppi is a good 5-set player. He's not, anywhere close to as good as he was in years past, when he's made some deep runs at like the Australian Open and some of the other slams. But when it comes to best of 5, he's always in it. And so he's sitting there right now at about 4.0 or plus 300 on the money line. So I'm going to find some way to fade Dimitrov in this spot, because I just
1.7 for over 3.5 sets in the match. Andrea Seppi versus
1.7. Yeah, that's pretty reasonable, because Dimitrov, even if he wins the match, he does do silly. He has mental lapses. He'll drop a set. He'll do something he'll lose a tie.
Tsitsipas Rublev clash in the first rounder.
Yeah, that's the best match by far in round one. There's no close second. And Rublev has every reason to be given a puncher's chance in that one at a dog price.
Okay, James, do you have any favorite spot from the first round? I think that we are losing you. Okay, you're back. So do you have any favorite tip from the first round? Snize, go on.
Okay, we lost James there. So for the first round matches, I have looked at 2 of them, and both of them are actually max positions I've taken here. I'm going heavy, hard and heavy on these first round matchups. One is Daniil Medvedev. He's going to be facing Prajnesh Gunneswaran, the Indian player. He's a fringe top 100 player, plays primarily on a hard court. However, with the new world number 5 Medvedev
Klijan
coming into
at
town,
7.
he's toast. The Russian is the next big thing right now to me. After the big three, with the form he's displayed, 3 consecutive finals over this North American hardcourt swing here leading up to the tournament. And he's been absolutely, if you look at his results, he's been demolishing anyone who isn't absolutely elite. He's winning by, in best of 3 set matches, he's winning by 7, 8, 9 games. And yeah, the goal for class is apparent here. Medvedev's sitting over 10% higher in the whole break stats and a whopping 450 points higher in the hardcourt ELO ratings. If you look at a model, that would give Medvedev about a 93% win rate in this matchup. I expect nothing less than a complete beatdown, and we're getting a line of -9.5 here. So we would need something in style with 6-3, 6-3, 6-2 for this to cash. I think he does that without any problem. And at 1.83, that is a max bet for me. Looking at my other bet, it's another big player, and it's going to be Rafael Nadal. He faces John Millman in the first round, the Aussie, who shockingly upset Federer in a very notable match in high humidity last year at US
Yeah,
Open.
I wanted to ask you about that. You're giving plus Asian handicap to Milman or minus to Nadal?
Minus to Nadal is the play. So yeah, Millman
Minus a
just
lot.
yeah, minus a lot. Millman just has a horrendous matchup against Nadal. He doesn't really have any pronounced weapons. He mostly lives on being consistent from the baseline, his grit, his fighting spirit, getting to balls. The problem is Nadal does that a whole lot better. He doesn't have the potential to outgrind or outlast the great Spaniard. The loopy topspin shots give him plenty of trouble, and in the pair's only meeting after 2017 Wimbledon, on grass that is, which should be a surface that's not as favored to Nadal as hard courts are. Nadal won 6-1, 6-3, 6-2, and it's very hard not seeing a similar outcome in this match. Millman will certainly be very, very upset with drawing Nadal in the first round when he has to defend quarterfinal points, and it's a bit demoralizing for him. He's currently deep in the Winston-Salem draw. I think he just lost a tight 3-setter against Steve Johnson. So he doesn't have the ideal preparation coming into this tournament either, whilst Nadal has been prepping for 2 weeks. So max stakes, Nadal minus 9.5 games, 1.71.
Okay, James, you are back. Shapovalov, Auger-Aliassime, another clash of the first round. Shapovalov favorite there at 1.77. Auger-Aliassime at underdog at 2.1 there, plus 110.
Yeah, I mean, you want me to suggest on that match?
Suggest on that match, plus if you have the others, your top matches. Talk a little bit about this one if you like.
Okay, I mean, I would say that it's a difficult one because I would have said Auger-Aliassime probably anything but a week ago at those prices. But Shapovalov has actually been very, very solid this week. And I feel like he's kind of found his rhythm. And when he finds his rhythm, he's very dangerous. He's the kind of player that can have, several months of just getting better and better and better. He has very much momentum player. So I probably wouldn't be touching that match because I think that's about right. And as I say, before this week, I would have disagreed with him being the favorite there. But from what I've seen in Winston-Salem, I think Shapovalov is ready. I think he'll give that. I think he'll be, very, very good in that match compared to how he's been the rest of the year. Okay, so in terms of the plays that I wanted to have, the first one, probably my favorite one, is Yari at anything over 3.75 against Raonic. You can get, I think, 4 with at least some of the books. Very simple. Yari's consistently been a player who's really pushed the top guys, especially the big serving players, because he's also very tall with a massive serve, and he can very much live with them from the baseline. And Raonic has been dreadful all year, so it's kind of just following the obvious trends here. I can see why it's priced like that. It's basically based on longer term data, doesn't take into account kind of like the matchup or how they're actually going to play against each other. But for me, I think Yari is going to look a lot shorter than that on the day. I would have him much closer to 3, maybe 3.25 than 4. And then the second one was Klijan against Cilic. It's kind of similar situation in the sense that Klijan is a player that's given the top players problems for his entire career. he's always managed to, well, not always, sometimes he can be dreadful, but he's generally managed to give them a good fight. He has the right kind of game for it, very heavy hitting. He'll probably prefer the heavier conditions. He tends to like to be able to really hit through the ball. And Cilic is not someone he's had any success against. And, you know, he's 6-1 in this match, so he probably won't again. But based on Cilic's form this year, I really can't see why he's that short against a very, very capable player in Klijan. So either I would personally just take the win because I'm not exactly sure about how I think that will play out, but I definitely think it's too long. But you could also take something like oversets at 2.1, you know, because I think that is probably how it will play out. Is at least one very good or very, very good set from Klijan, or one very bad set from Cilic. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. The last word for World Cup, or he will not be with us next week, so he will join us in week 2. What do you expect from the first week? Do you expect many upsets?
I think it's going to be pretty chalky. There of the coin flip matches, there'll be some short dogs that come through, but it has felt like the general tour has done a decent job of kind of saving themselves up for this, if that makes sense. There really hasn't been a lot of guys kind of in the middle tier who have really pushed themselves hard through the North American swing. And a lot of times the upsets we see early rounds at the US Open on the men's side are guys who have just played a lot of tennis in the heat in North America in the months of July, August into September. So because we haven't really seen, you know, we've seen players in general on the ATP Tour do a better job of kind of handling their schedule and not putting themselves through the ringer. I think it's going to be pretty chalky. One other look I forgot to mention, though, for round 1 that I think is maybe my favorite of all is Adrian Manarino upsetting Dan Evans. I think that's a wrong man favorite. I had Manarino at about a 55% chance to win. So if you're going to give me plus 120 on that, that's a look I like a lot. So that's about it, really.
Okay, we are finishing here. Thank you so much, guys. We will be back on Wednesday with the second round, on Friday with the third round, on Sunday with the fourth round, and so on. And on week 2, World Cupper will join us again for some great insights for the quarterfinals, semifinals, and final. Thank you, Snize. Thank you, James. Great to have you guys as always. And we will be back next week with Europa League, Champions League on Monday, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A on Tuesday, US Open on Wednesday, and UFC. You do the dance for every sport? Okay, we arrive right now at, I don't know. So on Friday all together with the US Open again. So thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your bets and have a green US Open. I think that if you follow us, you will have it. Thank you, guys. Thank you for following. Thank you for watching. Thank you, guys, for being with me. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. See ya.